This podcast is sponsored by
Terraform Development proudly supports the Hopi tribe and nonprofit Hopi entities to provide essential technical support in engineering, architectural, and project management services. Eddie Kalnimtua can relate to the hard work on the Hopi reservation, including the cornfield duties and traditional ceremonies that he was raised on. He values this tradition, so Terraform Development was formed to meet these needs on the Hopi reservation. Contact Terraform Development at TERRA4ORM.com and follow them on Instagram at Terraform Development.
Also sponsored by... Hey, you all. This is Carl from Carl and J-Man Save the World podcast. If you are listening to us from the Anchor website or the Anchor app, let me tell you about it. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Now, there's even an option where you can add Spotify directly to your episodes. The possibilities are endless for what you create. Anchor will also distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So go ahead and download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's ANCHOR.FM to get started.
Umaput Carl and J-Man out the Kaivas Today ne happy the 5-star 5-diamond chef J-Man but inumum ikwatsi ngasta stars kahima diamonds Carl.
Lolma, go quiet. The Kaivas Today.
And so just switching up the introduction there a little bit of I don't know how you would call it, Hopi-glish, Hopi in English.
Hopi thing.
And I think we'll talk about why the introduction was a little bit different in terms of the topic of today's episode. But we're back.
We're back.
Season
All
5.
right. Exactly. Congratulations for making it this far with us. If you haven't been following the episodes, go back to season 1 and start from there because you missed out on a whole lot.
You missed out on a riot. I think that we started out the podcast very well back in 2020, and I think in a few days it's going to be our birthday.
Yeah,
as a podcast.
Exactly. So we released this today on Wednesday, and in 2 days, Friday is actually going to be our 1 year anniversary.
So what day is that on Friday?
That would be the 19th, I believe.
21st. Fool.
Oh, well.
May 21st,
close
Carl,
close
the
enough.
CJ Podcast brand will be turning 1 year old.
Exactly. So give us, a shout out. Give us a warm welcome to do that. And, we love that we made it this far without any sort of
without any real cancel culture type
without
issues.
Anybody telling us that we're talking about wrong things and
And I do think that it is pretty remarkable because out here in Hopi, if you're familiar with the Hopi communities, that does happen often.
It does. It does
when somebody
happen.
gets on any type of platform or pedestal and, discusses whether Hopi history, Hopi culture, Hopi religion, anything pertaining to the Hopi people, usually that there's somebody out there, oh, that's wrong. And maybe, people have been saying that about us, but, from the comforts of their own home, didn't bring it to social media, didn't give us any type of stress or anxiety issues. So we thank you for that. And but definitely starting off season 5 with a bang, like to do some quick shout outs.
All right, go ahead and do some quick shout outs there.
Like to do some quick shout outs for some special individuals who helped to keep the Carl and J-Man Save the World podcast continuing. Big shout outs to our sponsors, Terraform Development. Shout out to Justin Villarreal for re-upping up with us again for season 5. And definitely would like to give a big shout out to our 30-pack contributors those that donate to us monthly to keep the party going. And definitely we're going to take some pictures around the studio, some of the new equipment that we got. And then we'll post that online. That way you can see what your dollar has gone towards. And so big shout out to Alexis Cahey, Harrison, HB Billigody, Michaela Williams, Deidre Leslie, Rachel Reinhardt, DV Fred is a new donor.
All right.
Noel Oyahoma, Joyce Hamilton, Jairus Billigody is also another new donor. Donovan Goldtooth, who was actually on the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Featured in one of our episodes. Our boy, Millard Kawanyama, Gary Lomayesva, and Michelle Holden. Big applause to all of those individuals out there. Big help to the CJ podcast brand.
Yeah, you actually had to write that on 2 pages worth because it was a lot of names.
I'm surprised I was able to keep my breath doing that.
And a huge shout out to Peace Academy here for housing CJ Podcast Studios here in the lovely downtown Gikotsmovi, Arizona.
And big shout out to Anchor, who I believe is actually giving us money.
Yeah, Anchor is
this
now
season. They haven't done given us a cent since season 1, but I guess we've fallen back into their good graces. So, big shout out. Thank you for that.
Big shout out to them.
And then, but one of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about before we kind of get into the gist of what the main topic of today's episode is that I think that a theme, at least for the first half of this season, is going to kind of be us going back to our roots.
Oh, yeah.
Talking a little bit more about Hopi culture, a little bit more about the Hopi language, about the Hopi religion, definitely the perspectives of what a Hopi who was born and raised here on the reservation kind of has in terms of whether that's the immediate world and the reservation world of which we live in, or, kind of the outside world. And it kind of made me laugh because, a lot of the topics that we developed for this season, a lot of those ideas were kind of brought up from the show that we did with KTNN.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, if you haven't listened to KTNN, I think they do put their podcasts on, what was it, Native something?
Native Conference Voices or something along those lines.
And so we are on that. So
but I guess we should figure it out if we're on that, what the name of that, what that program is.
Right.
But, it kind of made me laugh because it was like, leave it to the Navajo radio station for us to start thinking about more of these Hopi ideas that we could talk about on the podcast.
So we're actually the ones giving away the cookie recipe on KTNN.
So tune in.
So tune in on there on KTNN. What was their...
Because chocolate chips go in Hopi cookies, don't they?
Exactly. I think more sugar, just throw in sugar till you figure out that there's no more left.
I like to put salt in my recipes, so kind of a salty guy.
So yeah, go listen to KTNN. We're going to be on there for quite a bit. So, and it's a great way for KUII to step up their game.
Just so you know, KUII, Carl was real hurt that you all haven't stepped forward yet to give us the platform that the Navajo radio station loves us more than the local radio station here at home.
Yeah, exactly. So, KUII, just DM us.
Slide into the DMs.
Slide into the DMs.
Slide into the DMs. But, that was kind of some of the things that I wanted to cover. But I guess getting in today's episode, today we're going to be talking about language. But I guess specifically in a way, Hopi Lavayi.
Hopi Lavayi. I mean, like the whole subject of Hopi Lavayi, everybody's weird about this whole subject. I mean, the schools are weirded out about it, homes are weirded about it, and I kind of think we're kind of weirded about it as well, too.
It's kind of this huge topic, right? Because language is something that's kind of a huge topic in terms of, I guess, Indian country in general, because I think that the unfortunate reality is that a lot of our native languages, our indigenous languages, Hopi definitely included with it, is on the decline.
Oh, yeah.
Meaning that there are less speakers out there that are speaking the language, keeping the languages healthy. And unfortunately for some tribes, that they've completely lost their language entirely.
Exactly. There are a lot of tribes out there that are striving to find their native language through texts, through different recordings that the U.S. government had done in the past. And it's very, very, heartbreaking to see a lot of Native Americans out there there, especially like the Plains Indians, Northwest, Northeast, all of these different Native Americans out there that have lost their language.
Definitely. And so I guess, me posing this question to you, why is language so important?
I guess you could say it ties our culture together. It ties everything. It ties up like it's the glue that bonds both culture and a person together.
But we speak English. We can understand each other with English.
And that's the reason why
most of the tsukus in most Hopi dances these days speak English anyway.
And that's the reason why Soul loves Walmart so much. It's because she's glued the English language to Walmart and Target. So that's the reason why a lot of, natives love to do that.
So I guess, well, at least with your first argument that, language, I guess, in a way is intertwined with our ideas of what our identities are, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think that, without knowing a whole lot about an individual, especially people, the millions and millions of billions of people out there in the world that based upon the languages that they speak, that's something that you would automatically judge them as to what culture that they're tied to.
Oh, yeah.
And so you go out, you see a brown person speaking Spanish, you automatically assume that they're Mexican. You see a white guy out there speaking English, you automatically assume that they're American. But then when you see us kind of brown/white looking people out there speaking English, and you kind of a little puzzled is in terms of what culture that they belong to.
We're just the burnt side of the white bread, so.
But I definitely think that a lot of people do make the argument that language is tied to a person's identity.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, because a lot of our people, natives, Hopis, other indigenous folks, that the fact that the language is starting to dissipate, that, does that have an effect on a person's identity?
Exactly. I mean, like with you and me, our generation is sort of fluent in Hopi and is striving to keep that way, I guess you could say, in our native language. I mean, we talk together like in just normal conversation in Hopi pretty much.
Yeah, I call you Guasinos. I call you Ngasta Sikwi guy.
And I just retaliate, you know what? In English, talk to the hand.
But, I do think that at least in terms of language, and you kind of mentioned this too, that you said that it was the glue that holds, I guess, our culture together in a way, or that, it kind of holds our perceptions of what the makeup of who we are as people together. Because then definitely I know that, growing up as a kid, and then you kind of get these Hopi lessons. You get these Hopi lessons that are taught to you by whether that's your parents or your grandparents, your tahas, or your other mothers, or sometimes even your kias and your fathers from your father's side of the family, that oftentimes these lessons were taught in Hopi.
Yeah.
But then if you were to transcribe those lessons into English, that maybe the meaning isn't as powerful or isn't as impactful. Because to describe something in Hopi and then to try to describe that same thing in the process of the way that you describe it, it changes.
Yeah.
And then so like for example, right, you think about like our religious practices, some of the things within our religious practices. When you hear somebody say something like Pashim, or Bampi Pashim, which I guess would translate to almost in a way sacred. But then even then, that it doesn't necessarily really mean just sacred. Yeah, it almost means more than that.
So it just basically like what Pashimo means, it's really something special. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that's what Pashimo means.
Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of an example where when you hear something spoken in your own language, how it really shapes your perception of what it is that's being described when you're being told something in Hopi versus being told something in English. And, I think that also, too, the idea for the genesis of this episode for me kind of came from when we did our bonus episode last season for our audience was able to chime in and give us questions to ask. And we had that language episode. And we talked a little bit about how we were able to acquire the language. And then I think that you said that you were able to acquire the language because So and Kwa mostly spoke Hopi.
Yeah, and we still do that. I still talk Hopi to So and Kwa, and we conversate like that. But then, you kind of bring in that English version of yourself.
The Hoglish.
The Hoglish.
The English.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll come up with the term.
The hoplicklish.
Because like how they have Spanglish.
Spanglish.
The
Hopliglish.
We'll have to conceive what the Hopi version of that is.
Hoglish. All you Hoglish people out there. So yeah, I mean, like the way that I learned was through So and Kwa, and we still do that on a daily basis. And we still do that. And it's not because we want to preserve the culture, we want to preserve the language. It's because that is who we are. We identify as who we are, as them. So grew up Hopi, Kwa grew up Hopi. He grew up talking Hopi, and his second language was English. And so to conversate in that native part there is just honoring who he is, honoring how he was brought up.
And then I guess, for us to talk a little bit specifically about like the Hopi language.
Yeah.
I guess the Hopi language for those that might be wanting to learn that we did specify on a previous episode that there are 3 dialects of the Hopi language spoken here on the reservation.
Yeah, I guess you could say, yeah.
And so according to the Hopi Lavayi Titivani, which is the Hopi dictionary, that that there is a difference between the first Mesa and how Hopi spoken there, and then the difference between second Mesa, how it's spoken there, and then third Mesa. And so what do you think those differences are?
I think it's because I don't know. I'm not too sure where that, that dialect part came up with.
Where the specifics
are.
Well, one thing that I do see on social media is that I noticed that when First Mesa women, when they say Asquali, that they don't say it with the A sound, they say it with the E sound.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So it'll be like Esquali.
Yeah, Esquali.
Esquali. And so I guess that's kind of a form of that dialect change when it's done in First Mesa. And then, of course, we document it quite extensively that the second Mesa is that they used the F sound.
Like, F you guys, F those F'ers up there.
And so, like, I guess an example would be like yep eh. What does yep eh mean?
Like right here, or right now,
right.
Yeah.
And then what? How would a second Mesa person say yep eh?
Like yef eh, yef eh you yeffers.
and then the third Mesa, I don't know what the significant change in how we speak. Although I do hear people out here say that third Mesas, that we speak slower.
Yeah.
That we speak a lot slower in comparison to how other Hopi speakers speak. But there's another difference too. And that I think that, and I would make the argument that this is a third Mesa thing. I've heard a lot of people say that it's just a Munqab thing. But if you watch Titskwa Iqatsi, which took place in Hotvela, then, that's kind of my evidence that this isn't just a Munqab thing, but rolling the R's. Rolling the R's.
Like Rodrigo.
But, and so, how do you say run in Hopi?
Run, Rodrigo. Is that pretty much how third base says their R's? Run, Rodrigo. Run to shore.
Just say store.
It's like, Robert, go run to the store.
Well, thanks for putting a big torpedo on this episode and sinking the whole ship. But that would be the third base example, is that because I think some people out here would say waji, right?
Yeah.
Is that how you say it?
Yeah, so like,
waji?
yeah, like second Mesa would say waji, like waji.
How do first Mesa say waji?
I think they say this almost the same way too.
How do Navajos say waji?
Like Rodrigo. I don't know how the Navajos would say.
But us, we say wadi.
Yeah, like wadi.
Wadi.
Yeah, wadi.
Or look, or did you see that guy Umbut Al Yori?
Yeah, like Yori.
Yori, that should be somebody's name, Yori.
Yeah. Hey, what's up, Yori?
But I guess, those are kind of some of the differences some small differences in terms of the how the language is spoken between the three different mesas. But I think that if you're a linguist, and, somebody that studies the language and kind of learns a little bit more of the sounds, that there are probably a lot more differences in terms of how some of the words that we speak, how we pronounce them, based on the sounds coming from our mouth. Like, for example, something that I just learned recently is the word dog in Hopi.
Yeah.
And so, I think that a lot of people just simply say Poko.
Yeah.
Poko. Then the Songopavis and Sepalavis, Masangnavs.
Yeah, say
Ofko.
Yeah.
Ofko. But then, on for us Oraye descendant people, people that come from the village of Oraivi, that it's a Poko, into where you actually have a falling O sound.
Okay.
And then so, that's just kind of an additional sound that we make when we say poko. But I guess this guy that was telling me, he was saying that in terms of the linguistic world, that there are ways that they can identify from where the heritage language developed.
Yeah.
And so he was saying that might be the argument in terms of who came first.
Really?
Team Oraivi.
Hi, I'm Kiona, Hopi Relief volunteer and board member. Hopi Relief is a grassroots, Hopi-led nonprofit organization founded to provide relief services, food boxes, and essential supplies to Hopi tribal members throughout the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. Our focus is to uplift the Hopi community by empowering our people to create homegrown solutions to challenges we face. We are supported by the generosity of like-minded individuals and organizations who simply want to help. You can get involved by following us on social media, sharing our story, or donating on our website, www.hopirelief.org. We are at Hopi Relief on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
But, those are just kind of some of the differences. But I guess, carrying the conversation forward, I guess, in terms of, us being Hopi guys.
Yeah.
Growing up and living on the Hopi reservation, why is the Hopi language important? Why would you say it's important to you?
Like, the importance of Hopi language goes back thousands and thousands of centuries. It's because, I
don't think the world's that old, Carl.
The world's really old. I guess it's because when you listen to the migration stories and when you listen to like the Hopi stories, and it states in there that Gokyang Sowati created.
Who's that?
The Spider Woman.
That Navajo god?
Yeah, the changing woman. No, Gokyang Sowati, where she created the languages for everybody. She created the moon and the stars, and she created the worlds alike. She brought us, to a different place every time. And when we got up to the third world or the fourth world, if you wanted to be wherever your stories are at, we came into a place called, we came onto a person's land or a deity's land called Maasau.
Okay.
And there he taught us that this is my land here, and this is where you're going to, if you want to live here, I only live in a simple life with my soya, my seeds, and
with the original iPod, not this highly developed
my Zune. My Zune. And he said that if you want to live like me, then you have to take on what my responsibilities are here. And so with that, given to that, they, the Hopi people agreed. And in some stories, you'll hear that Maasau's real name is Hopi.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And this was taught by Kwa himself, where, he said that Maasau was the one to give us our name. And we are in honor of him because we actually never really had identity. We never really had a real identity until we found out that this was our true destiny, to become stewards of the land, to become land takers here in this desolate, mesa here. And so I guess that's where the language started to come about, and all of those different little cultures or different little, societies started to be born with that. And so I guess that's what you say in a way that, yes, language itself is very, very important to Hopi people. Am I in that right section? I think I got off subject there a little bit.
I like how you like to circle the whole park before you go straight to the point. But I guess for me, I do agree with a lot of people out there conversationally talking about this topic, that our language is important because it is our identity. It is who makes a Hopi person a Hopi to a degree. You know what I mean? I think that there's history within our language. I think that there's knowledge. I think that there's all kinds of other things that's intertwined with our language, even power. Like I would make the argument that, there is power in our language, because then like when you look at our ceremonies, that all of our songs that we sing are in Hopi. Yeah. That the clouds come because they hear our songs sung in Hopi. That other, phenomenal things happen as a result of our religious practices because they're done in the Hopi language.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you really look at it, and when you really, I guess you could say it goes back to the same saying. It's like, yes, it is the glue that holds us together. It is the glue it's actually the binder that makes up this culture here on the Hopi Reservation. It makes us who we are and what we believe in a lot stronger that way.
And so I guess think about your childhood, and then, thinking about what some of the old people, what some of their lessons were in terms of the language. Like, for example, my soul, she would always stress. And I think that, any Hopi person out there, especially if you've grow up, on the reservation to a degree, whether it was, only in the summertime, maybe you lived out here or you only came on the weekends, but you always heard it. You always heard this phrase, which means you guys better start speaking Hopi. And so that was something that my soul would preach to us often. And she would always say that, you guys need to start speaking Hopi. Yeah. And I think it was really her generation's perspective, and even, still some younger generations from that to a degree, that believe that a Hopi person speaks Hopi. Yeah. That it's almost like you're not Hopi if you don't speak Hopi.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, I have my CIB card, my... that one that you get from the tribe. Yeah. It says that I'm Hopi on there.
And I got my bully pictures on Facebook that says that I'm Hopi.
And then when you don't know how to speak Hopi, but yet you still understand the whole idea of that language, are you still considered Hopi in that terms there?
And I think that, that's kind of a conversation that our generation is to have, especially when we see the projection of where our language is going. And, whether that's something that is going to be revitalized, if we're going to make steps towards bringing that back. But those were some things that I would often hear from her. And then I think that even as we got initiated into the adult societies and started participating in the religion, that you would hear that from the men in the Kiva Umapapa Hopiya Totene, which is in reference to, if you're going to participate, we do things in our language. That the dancers are only going to talk and speak in the language. The singers are only going to sing in the language. And then even when you get even a little bit deeper in terms of Katsinam, that I've always been told that in Katsinam, the Kachinas, that they only understand Hopi. And so, and then that kind of really makes you think when you're a young person, because then I guess... thinking back on my younger years, that I did struggle with the language, that I probably am a little bit better of a speaker today. And I think simply because that I'm older now, but then thinking back on those younger years, that I didn't speak it as good.
Yeah. I mean, like the very first, when you're learning a new language, I guess you could say, is that it always starts out making fun of each other. And you always learn the bad words first.
What does Yomimita mean?
Yomimita.
Or Yomi?
Yomi. Let's see. That's let's see.
I don't expect you to know this, Carl.
Moving forward. Oh, that one there. Yeah, that's why. Moving forward.
Pelvic woo.
Pelvic woo. Yeah, I guess you could say.
I tease Carl because that's a phrase that's usually said in a sexual manner, but because Carl's still the 40-year-old Hopi virgin, that I didn't expect him to know that term.
So, I mean, like, you know, the whole idea between...
Carl's face is red right now, for those of y'all that are wondering.
So the whole idea between like young generation learning the Hopi language and versus like older generation knowing the language, there's that huge gap. There's a huge gap in why we as I guess you could say, we're still a younger generation, right? So we can still kind of say that we're still part of that younger generation.
We're still that younger generation, so we can say things like lit.
Yeah, and like what I was saying, like what I was saying is that, you know, there is a huge gap between that and where, like, I guess the true Hopi language is kind of forgotten, and all of these different short little words are forming in part of that. Like when you hear the older generation talk in this ancient language, I guess you could say, there's all of these alien foreign language, you know, words that are being pronounced that you've never really heard of, but yet they mean a different. They mean the same thing as you would say in regular Hopi language today.
Yeah, I think that definitely these conversations need to be had, because I think that, like, the way that we growing up living here on the reservation in the 80s and the 90s, that, you know, our mentalities were molded to think that you had to speak Hopi in order to believe that you were Hopi. But then, you know, sometimes, and I think that you and I are fortunate because we grew up in a household full of speakers.
Yeah.
And that when we transitioned to other relatives' homes, that those were households full of speakers. And so the language was available to us. But yet you have a whole nother group of people, our age even, whose parents didn't speak Hopi to them.
Yeah.
Or, you know, grandparents may not have spoken Hopi to them. And so you kind of mentioned it with that generational gap, that you have this older generation of Hopi that speaks the language, but then yet you'll go down several generations to this new generation of Hopi that are trying to be Hopi, but yet they're not hearing the language being spoken into their ear. And so for folks like that, if they're not given the real opportunity to learn Hopi, then how can they be Hopi if they're not given this opportunity to be taught the language?
Well, one theory is that, you know, the boarding school days, you know, where like Hopi children were taken from the villages, the different villages, and placed in boarding schools at the edge of the mesas or at the edge of the property of the reservations. And they were taught to not speak their language. They were taught not to do anything that had to do with their culture, their identity. And they were stripped of that. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's where one part of it, like not learning Hopi, came about. And that's where a lot of that is still going on today. It's that historical trauma is still relevant because of that.
So I guess you could say that those are a couple of ideas as to why we all don't speak Hopi today.
Yeah.
Right? Because, you know, that was kind of always an interesting concept, because then, like, when you think about the Hopi reservation, right, like, we're miles from any type of, like, real Bahana community.
Yeah.
Like, the closest, I mean, you could argue like Winslow or Flagstaff, maybe even like Gallup or Holbrook, but they're not close in vicinity to the reservation to the point where you could make that argument that assimilation is a real reason why we don't speak the language today. It's like, I feel like that where our reservation is situated, that all of the advantages for us to speak our language, still be speaking our languages, are there.
Yeah.
But for some reason, we all don't speak Hopi.
Exactly. I mean, it's weird because we have that opportunity. We have all of the old people. We have the knowledge to want to learn the Hopi language. We have all of that. You know, the language is not gone yet. But yet we are slowly killing it. We are slowly trying to get rid of it ourselves because we don't speak Hopi on a daily basis.
And I think that some of the arguments that you kind of brought up are pretty valid in terms of, like, especially what you said in how we speak Hopi today. Because I always make the argument that it's difficult in this day and age today to learn Hopi properly, because our speakers are starting to speak Hopi in a way, like you said, that they'll shorten words, or they'll speak Hopi in a way to where it's accommodating to the white man's language to a degree.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, exactly. And plus, because of the assimilation that we all gone through, and plus well, I guess, remember what we were saying is that we're not assimilated just yet. We still hold on to our culture.
We're just half assimilated.
We're half assimilated.
Yeah.
So I guess you could say, you could make that argument is that, yeah, we are half assimilated, but we still hold on to that culture and that language. But yet we still want to do Netflix, and we still want to go to the movies and go to the mall and buy Nikes and stuff.
Go to the bars. Drink that double shot of whiskey and dance at the honky tonk. But I guess what I was trying to say is that I think that speakers today, and you really hear it, I mean, at least in terms of my experiences that I've really heard it, is that the speakers today cater the language to common English phrases.
Yeah.
Instead of using like a proper term to say something for those of us that might be listening and trying to learn to speak the language. Because, like, for example, down in the Kiva, when somebody presents a new song, they'll sing the song, and then when it's time to, okay, let's try it. Like, there might actually be a word for, like, let's try this new song out. But then you'll say "tai wadi," or "tai wadi," which means run it. Run it, which is conforming to an English phrase.
Yeah, exactly. And it's weird because we use different terms that mean different meanings, but yet we know what it means because we've been using it for so long.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so what other barriers do you think that are out there for folks that are unable to learn the language?
One thing too is that we have a lot, out here, people just don't like people. We hate each other to the point where we wish that other person never existed. And where I'm going with this is that, yes, we do that.
Carl's exaggerating a little bit.
And we do that to the point where we just don't want to talk to that person. We just don't want to conversate with that. And when that happens, we lose that part of that culture there. We lose that part of like how we're supposed to present ourselves in that Hopi way. Like lomata lungva or loma, all of these different words that are lost because of that. And we're losing our sense of reality towards each other. Mm-hmm. And when we do that, our language starts to go as well too.
If we're not communicating with each other.
Yeah.
How do you say hello in Hopi?
Hello.
Hello. But no, I think that you're on the right track. And, I've had kind of, this conversation with friends before.
Yeah.
And, I think most recently I had this conversation with my nephew that, unfortunately, especially for people like us in our generation that grew up like maybe in the 80s, the 90s, or even the 2000s.
Yeah.
It's that sometimes I do feel like that the older generation makes us feel like it's our fault that we don't speak Hopi. Or they make it feel like it's our fault that we're losing our culture. But yet, when you think about like assimilation, when you think about culture decline, when you think about language decline, that a lot of that, the motions for that to happen started long before we were born.
Oh, yeah.
And like you mentioned, the boarding school era, which happened, as early as the 20s, 30s, and the 40s, where our people were being discouraged to speak their language. And so the occurrences for our culture and language decline was happening generations before we were even born. But yet, when you think about your upbringing, when you think about growing up in the villages and you're always being preached, or like you mentioned before, that your taha would tease you guys and say that you guys were just really little pahana kids in brown skin. And so I think that when you're treated like that for your entire life, that you do feel like that you have that it was your responsibility as to the reason why the language and the culture is declining, but yet the actuality of it is that that's not really the case.
No, exactly. I mean, you're not born with this language here. You're not born with the culture.
It has to be acquired.
It has to be acquired through that. And so I know, even though if I was born like to a Bahana family, but, and I was brown skin and never knew what that culture was, although my blood is Hopi and they never taught me anything like that.
You'll never learn the language.
Yeah, I'll never learn the language.
And I think the realization, at least in terms of this idea that I'm presenting, it comes from being a parent. It comes from my kids.
Yeah.
I always think about, my son, he has a Nintendo Switch that he and his sister shares. And sometimes I get so frustrated when he just leaves it where somebody could step on it and damage it. And I get mad because it's a pretty expensive piece of entertainment equipment.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I have to tell myself, well, he's only 6 years old, that, he has to be taught how to take care of his things. He has to be educated onto where and how to take care of this. And it's the same concept for our Hopi children. They have to be taught how to speak Hopi. They have to be taught the importances of our religions. They have to be taught the importances of our culture and how to respect our culture, that it's not something that's just going to develop within them just because they were born to Hopi parents.
Exactly. I mean, even though, So'os will say, "Ma papa Hopi ya totani," it still goes back to that saying that, yes, we have to teach ourselves how to talk Hopi.
Mm-hmm. I always tell people that anytime anyone says that to you, then you always respond, "Ay, papa estamos mi Hopi ya totani."
Yeah, like, well, you better talk Hopi to me, so.
And so, kind of talking about that, but I guess, in terms of the future of the Hopi language, what are some ways do you think that we can start teaching Hopi?
I mean, of course there's schools on the Hopi reservation here that do teach Hopi as a curriculum. And I think now it is being part of a taught curriculum now, that you have to learn Hopi, this Hopi language, in order to pass grade school or high school. And I guess that's where you can kind of battle that language barrier.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I mean, like, what I want, think of is that language is always taught at home. Mm-hmm, language mm-hmm. and culture is taught at home. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And without that proper knowledge, you might as well not be Hopi at all.
Mm-hmm. And, I think that there's probably a whole underlying discussion about what you just said in terms of why some of the older generation thinks that only the language and the culture should be taught at home. And we'll probably touch upon that stuff once we get into the other episodes. But, I did forget that I did post this question to our Instagram.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
And so if you want to get some responses from our followers that follow us on Instagram. And so basically, I post a question, what does the Hopi /indigenous languages mean to you? And then somebody responded, I think us as teens and children need to step up and be responsible and learn it. Because, and I guess that really only is applicable for a specific population, basically people that are living on the reservation.
Yeah.
Because if you're living in the middle of Alaska, who are you going to find that, is going to speak Hopi and be able to teach it to you? But definitely if you're living here on the reservation, going out of your way to go ask so, how do you say this in Hopi? Or how would I go about learning Hopi? What's the sentence structure? How do I do pronouns and nouns, and etc. And then, we kind of had this conversation too about it too. It's just understanding that you're probably going to be laughed at.
Oh yeah.
And developing that thick skin that if this is something that I really want for myself, then I'm going to undertake whatever teasing that comes my way as a result to be able to learn it.
Exactly. With any type of language that you're learning, it does take a lot of discipline and it does take a lot out of you just to learn some sort of thing. But without the culture itself, you might as well just not speak Hopi at all, because Hopi is considered with the culture and the language itself. And without those two things, you won't have any type of Hopi Matiwa with everything like that.
And then I think that there's a couple of also some responses in terms of I wish the language was more accessible. Because I think that, in a lot of our episodes, especially when we talk about our urban counterparts, that more of our people are living in the urban areas. And so like for those folks, like, because I always imagine that, what if you were a young person living in Phoenix, but yet your parents didn't speak Hopi?
Yeah.
And then that's the only people that you have to conversate with in the language. Then what do you do about that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like urban Indians love to come out here and play tourist for a while and, hashtag Hopi life. And they go back and then
come out with their, what were those jackets? The pea coats, the sailor
pea coats, with their Drakkar perfume and their beautiful hair, and so I guess you could say that, yes, language is something that it's not a right. It's not a right to learn the language. It's a given to where it's supposed to be accessible to anybody. It's supposed to be something where if you know the culture and you want to understand more of Hopi, then you must learn the language itself. But if you just learn the language to just learn the language, it's just speaking Spanish without going to go eat tacos at the real restaurant.
Well, you roll your R's pretty good, so. Here's another response. It says, I wish more people stressed the importance of language and used it more often.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty valid point because then, like I said before, as children, we're always being preached that, mapapa hopia.
Yeah.
And then the person goes and starts speaking English to us.
I remember in the kivas, they, the elder men would speak to us in Hopi, all these great sentences and this great thing that overwhelms you and this great speech. And then he's like, oh, I'm going to say this in English for all you non-Hopi speakers out there. and then it just kind of kills the vibes.
And then people start kind of chuckling under their breath after some real sacred words are being spoken. But, I think that as speakers, I do understand that it can be exhausting, right?
Yeah.
To like speak Hopi to like maybe your children or to your nieces, your nephews, your grandchildren, especially when they can't understand you.
Yeah.
Because then I think that's a reason why a lot of the speakers don't speak Hopi to their children.
Yeah.
It's because that they can't understand what they're saying, that the process to go and actually teach them would take more time to be able to do. But then I guess if you truly appreciate and love the language, then isn't that something that we should be doing?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we want to teach younger generation how to speak Hopi because it solidifies that we're going to be here for a very, very long time. And when we don't do it, then it's just making sure that the end of the world for us Hopis is coming closer and closer. So if anybody out there that does love to speak Hopi, go ahead and just talk to a child in Hopi. Speak to a child in Hopi. Get mad at them in Hopi. And
then if you're someone that's wanting to learn Hopi, it's just getting used to the practice of incorporating Hopi in your everyday language.
Yeah,
even if they're just little words that
Yeah.
And just start saying them in your everyday conversations with people.
Yeah. Like I do with Rodrigo. So, all right. Well, I mean, it was a great conversation with that. I'm pretty sure there's more to it. And I'm pretty sure that we could go on forever with this whole language topic. But
definitely, I think that this could be another potential two-parter down the way, or maybe
exactly.
even get an additional speaker in the studio and have a conversation that way.
Yeah, exactly. So
so Carl, what does namuru mean?
Namuru. Well, there's two words to that. So one is that like to roll up, and the other one is to black diamond condom, pretty much. So
What the hell? Yeah, I think we have a different understanding of what that word means.
Oh, exactly.
But definitely like to thank everybody. Another thank you out there to all of our supporters, our 30-pack sponsors. Big shout out to our season 5 sponsors.
Yeah, exactly. And, if you want to become a monthly sponsor, please do go to anchor.fm/CJ Podcast 85 to become our monthly donor or monthly sponsor. And if you want to just donate something out of the blue, like $1 or more, go to buymeacoffee.com/CJ Podcast to donate anything you want.
And also, too, in a couple of days, it's our birthday to all of the Tsunyam ladies out there, all the Tuwangam ladies, Tawangam, Kwangam. I like chocolate cake.
Don't make some for him, just me.
Carl has no sickwies, so he doesn't need any Kwangwanova.
So if you are listening to this on YouTube, go ahead and smash that like button. Go ahead and ring the bell and everything like that.
Mutikna, that like button.
There you go. Make sure that it's broken. So thank you again for listening to Carl and J-Man Save the World podcast.
And then you can also follow us on our social media.
Oh, yeah.
We're at Carl and J-Man all across the board on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
All right. Well, thank you again. Thank you for listening to Carl and J-Man Save the World podcast. My name is Carl, and this is my best friend, J-Man.
Ay, también,